think we are. Rena, did you have a chance to mess around with the original sound settings this week with any students? Did you try it out? No.
We don't use Zoom. We
Right.
use
I
we
just I
use
didn't
Google.
know if you just bothered to try it out anyways or with anybody just to see.
No, I mean I've done some singing on regular settings with the iPad, and it seems to be fine.
Right. Right. Brett, is Hedva going to be joining us as well today?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but I know in the coming weeks she will from time to time join us.
Okay.
Uh, since I'm muted for a second, for the group that's here, thank you for everyone and all the outpouring. But the group that's here, many of you have contacted me, and I just really appreciate the Minyan on Tuesday and appreciate all the support of the community. But it's been extensive, and I'm getting so many things. I can't respond to all of them immediately, but I would love to. I will eventually respond to everyone personally, but I want
Well,
to generally just thank everyone.
it's important to remember, Brett, that the mitzvah of Nichum Avelim is incumbent upon us, and you have absolutely no obligation in return. There's no reason to have to reach out and say thank you or anything else. And I know that you are one who is so accustomed to doing so much for others, and this is a time for you to be able to receive and not have to worry about returning it. Everybody who's reached out to you knows that you are a thoughtful and caring and present force in their lives, so you don't need to worry about getting back to people. Just receive it and allow that to come to you. So, all right. So why don't we can get started? It's about 5 after. So David, we're very blessed. We have David Stein leading us in all of our davening this morning, and we have Judy leading us in our Torah reading this morning. So you only get me for a quick little drash and some things towards the very end of the service. But so I'm just going to sit back and mute myself, and David, let you take it from here.
Okay. Page 103. Morning Blessings, page 103. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sach vivina lavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzomo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Page 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'ya'ef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir she'ena me'enai u'numa. Utanenu hayom uv'chol yom l'cheinu chesed u'rachamim be'enecha u'b'neicho ro'enu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. Page 112, Psalm for Shabbat, page 112. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat. Tov lodot l'Adonai ulzamer l'shimcha elyon. Lagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunatecha ba'leilot. Od Yenubun b'seva d'shenim v'rananim yeyu lagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avla tavo. Page 120, Psalm 30, for rededication, page 120. Mizmor shir Chanukat habayit leDavid. Aramimcha Adonai ki dilitani v'lo simachta oivai li. Hafachta mispidi lemacholi, pitachta sakivat azereni simcha, leman yizamercha chavod v'lo yidom Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. Page 122. Psuke de Zimra, page 122. Baruch shamar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch omeh v'oseh, Baruch gozer umkayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz. Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sachar tov lireyav, Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lenetzach, Baruch podeh matzil, Baruch Shemo.
High holiday nusach.
Yachid Chaya Olami, Melech Meshubachim Farah Diad Shmo Gadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Meulal Batishbachot. Page 136. Ashrei, page 136. Ashrei Yoshvei Betecha Od Yahalalu Chasela, Ashrei Ha'am Shekach Alo, Ashrei Ha'am Shadonai Elohav Tila LeDavid. Tilat Adonai Daber Pi Vevarech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed Va'anachnu Nevarech Ya Me'ata V'ad Olam. Hallelujah. Page 139, Psalm 148. Page 139. Hallelujah, hallelujah Adonai, et Adonai min hashamayim, hallelujah b'maromim. וירם כרם למו תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו, hallelujah. Page 141, Psalm 150, page 141. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Berki Auzo. Hallelujah, 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 betake a shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, benevel vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 betofu machol, hallelujah, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 betzilzelei shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, betzilzelei truah. Kol haneshama hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Uvaruch Shem Kvodo Leolam Velim Alei Kvodo Et Kol Haaretz Amen Ve'amen. Page 145. Closing blessings. Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech Et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. לך לבדך אנחנו מודים, אילופינו מלא שירה קיים ולשונה נראי נחם וגלם. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך. פעמיים הטובות שעשית עם אבותינו ועמנו. 146. ממצרים גלתנו אדוני אלוהינו, מבית עבדים פריתנו ברב. על כן איברים שפילגת. כי כל פה לך יודע, וכל לשון לך תשבע, וכל ברך לך תכרע, וכל קומה לפניך תשתחווה. מי ידמה לך ומי ישווה לך ומי יערוך לך. כאמור לדוד, ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. 147. האל בתעצומות עוזך, גדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים ואדוני לישרים נבט תהילה, בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש. ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. שכן חובת כל היצרים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך. 148. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך אל חיי העולמים. So in this break between the two services, some of you have signs for me, and I have a sign for you. So from the Talmud, Barachot 53b, Rabbi Yosei Omer, Gadol ha'oneh amen yoter min hamvarech. Rabbi Yosei says, greater is the one who responds Amen than the one who recited the blessing. It's, I think, worth pondering why Rabbi Yosei would say such a thing, because it seems pretty counterintuitive. But I leave it to you to figure that out for yourself. Maybe we'll get to discuss it at some point later.
Is there anybody here who is fluent or knows basics of ASL? Like, is there a sign for Amen besides having a printed out sign?
Ask Phil when you...
Well, yeah, Phil's never with us on Saturday morning, so we can't ask him. But I don't know if anybody knows that. Okay.
So, Shacharit, page 150. 150. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer uborei choshech yoseh shalom uborei et hakol. Ein kerch gekaren Eloi avien zulatecha, efes biltecha midom elach. Ein kerch echad Eloheinu balam hazeh, vein zulatecha malkinu lechaye ohalam haba. Efes biltecha golenu mimot hamashiach, vein dom elecha moshienu litchiat hametim. 151. El Adon al kol ha'masim baruch umvorach befi kol neshama godlo. Oh, you know what? Since I have the floor here, I can change the key, which I need to do. All right. El Adon al kol ha'masim baruch umvorach befi kol neshama godlo v'tuvo malei olam da'at utvuna sovivim oto amitgael chayot hakodesh הנדר בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נוע זיום בכל העולם. וצמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים באימה רצון קונם. פאר בכבוד נותנים לשמו, צולה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש ויזרח אור, ראה והתקין צורת הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה לה לה, יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. 152, לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך, ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. 153. תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדושים, ישתבח שמך מעד מלכנו יוצר משרתים. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים באימה ויראת רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ובתורה, בשירה וזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים, ומפארים ומריצים, ומקדישים וממליכים. את שם האל המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח. בשפה ברורה ובנעימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך לארץ כבודו. והאופנים והחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. לאל ברוך נעמות ייתנו. המחדש בטובו בכל יום מעשה, תמיד מעשה בראשית, כאמור לו שעורים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות. $154 אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותרחם עלת עלינו. ואר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך. אבינו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו כמו מיעוט לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך גדול סלע באמת להודות לך על יחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Continue individually. $156.
David, before we continue, I just want to say something. So, from this week's Parsha, Ekev, we actually get the second paragraph of the Shema. It appears in this week's Torah portion. And it's a very challenging text. And so most synagogues, if they do any of the Shema out loud, they will skip over the second paragraph. And the reason why people struggle with it is it talks about divine reward and punishment. That if you do certain things, then we'll be blessed. And if we don't do those things, then we'll be punished. Which seems to convey the idea that God is directly involved in these punishments. But I prefer to understand the text differently, which is that there is a basic concept of karma, more or less, woven into the fabric of the universe. That if we work together to make things good, then we'll reap the benefits of that. And yet, if we all fight against one another and we do whatever is right in our own eyes and not worry about being part of something larger, then things will crumble apart. And I think folks really do struggle with this as an idea in general. But if anything, I think everything we've been going through lately really reinforces this as a theology for us. That the mitzvot are there to set up a just society where everybody is cared for. Nobody is favored more than others, and that we're all striving to have a just society. And what we're going through right now is seeing so much individualism and people not believing science or scientists or authorities and needing the proof for themselves to be able to see it with their own eyes. We're seeing a rise in flat earthers because they can't see the curvature of the earth themselves. So if they can't see it, then of course it can't be so. And similarly, people who don't believe that COVID is really a thing because they don't have it, or they don't necessarily have any of their friends who have it. And should we actually believe that this is a real thing, or are people pulling the wool over our eyes? But when we realize that we're part of something much larger and work together and say, yes, I want to make sure that my neighbor is healthy just as much as I am healthy, just as much as some complete stranger is healthy, then we see a cohesion where things can work and where we can beat an illness. But as we're seeing plenty of places where we have a lot of doubters and a lot of people who ascribe to a more individualistic philosophy, things are falling apart. The economy is crippled, and it's a real plague. Not just the illness, but the mindset is a real plague on our society. And that's exactly what this second paragraph is talking about. Right? When everybody does whatever is right in their own eyes, we will be driven from the land. Where will we go? We have no job, we have no money, we have a broken economy. You've got to pick up and go somewhere else where maybe things can be better. But things can be better right here, as long as we understand that we're all in this together and we heed God's mitzvot. We heed God's command to try to do what is right, not just for us, but for everybody. And then hopefully we benefit from that as well. Yeah, Jeff. Somebody who's involved in the direct research of COVID.
I was going to say that whenever I read this, I have to tell you, the environment absolutely works this way. That if you don't follow the mitzvot and you neglect it and you exploit it, it's going, elsewhere in the Talmud it says, the earth will take back its Shabbatot. We keep denying it and denying it and denying it. That one of these days, it's gonna take it back whether we like it or not. And whenever I read this, I have to think of the whole ecosystem. Unfortunately, I think it does work this way. It's not the thing.
And as the Tanakh tells us, right, it takes 7 years, 7 times as long for the healing as it does for the wrongdoing. So obviously we didn't say it out loud today, but I always encourage people to really look at these words closely and really don't shy away from them, but really embrace them and realize it doesn't have to be understood literally. Most of the Torah should not be understood literally, but there's incredible wisdom here. So thank you, Jeff, as well. And David, I'm sorry for interrupting. Please, you're doing a beautiful job. I invite you to continue. We're on page 157.
56 at the bottom, if you... Emet v'yatziv v'nachon v'kayam v'yashar. 157. Emet Elohei olam malkeinu tzur Yaakov. Lador vador ukayam ushmo kayam kis'o nachon u'malchuto v'emunato la'ad kayamet. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elo Avoteinu Malkeinu melech Avoteinu Goaleinu goel Avoteinu Yotzerenu tzur Yeshuateinu Podenu matzilenu mi'olam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha Ezrat Avoteinu atahu me'olam. Ashrei ish yishma lemitzvotecha. Umi baladecha ein lanu melech goel umoshia. 158 continuing. Mi mitzrayim galtanu Adonai Eloheinu mi beit avadim peditanu. Tilot le'ayon barachum vorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira v'simcha rabba ve'amru chulam Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Nora tilot osei feleh שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופתחנו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. 159, Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei v'Nehem L'man Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Ufoked Umoshia Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Etim Atah Rav L'Hoshia מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללוך סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Continuing on 162. ישמח משה במתנת חלקו, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו, כליל תפארת בראשו נתת, ועומדו לפניך על הר סיני. ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, וכן כתוב בתורתך. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. כי לישראל עמך נתתו בעבר, לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת. עם מקדשי שביעי כולם יסבו ויתענגו מטובך, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, חמדת ימים עתו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, ארצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. שבענו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך. וטהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בך ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל תפילתם, והשבת עבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבת ותקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. 164. ותחזן עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו באלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו, מגן אישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך נספר תהילתך, על חיינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו הפקדות לך. ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלאותיך וטובתך שבכל עת, ערב בבוקר וצהריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, והמרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. וכל החיים יודוך סלע, ויהללו את שמך באמת. האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך לכנאל להודות. Sim shalom balam tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha barachenu avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha ki be'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat chayim ve'avat chesed u'tzedakah v'racha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. A few moments for individual spontaneous prayers. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, אמרו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, אמרו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen.
Yeah, Asher Koach, Kol HaKavod. Really wonderful. And David, you always, whenever we read Torah for us, it's always declaimed, so it's nice to hear the singing voice as well, because it's such a lovely singing voice. And I also really love you actually afforded us the time for some personal prayers at the end, but of course the Siddur tells us what our personal prayers should be. Leave it to Jews to tell us how to be spontaneous. So Kol HaKavod, we are at the Torah service, and I see that Bill joined us. Bill, it's wonderful to have you with us. And it's the first Shabbat with us on Zoom. And it's your sister's yard site this Shabbat. We're glad that you're with us. If not for saying Kaddish for your sister, but we're just glad to have you with us. We've missed seeing your face, especially in the front row or two of the sanctuary where you would normally be sitting if we were here in person. We are at the Torah service. So the Torah reading is posted at mishkan.org. You also could have gone to the Rabbinical Assembly to download a PDF of the Eitz Chaim, or maybe you actually have a Chumash at home. Either way, we are in the book of Deuteronomy. That's what it's called. We're in Deuteronomy. It's chapter 7. We're at verse 12, the beginning of Parshat Ekev. And I assume Judy is going to be telling us a little bit about what we are reading as she is going along reading for us in the Hebrew. But there's a lot of stuff. It's really, there's some really famous stuff in here, and some really difficult theology in this Parsha as well. But I think it's really crucial theology, and I think it says a lot about what it means from a Jewish perspective, what's really at the core of our Jewish identity. And we're going to be taking a look at some of that a bit deeper later when I give my drash. But in the meantime, I turn everything over to Judy to lay for us.
Thank you. And I encourage all of you to read this as you follow along through the lens that Gabriel gave us earlier, because it's really, otherwise you get disgusted with the whole thing. But if you incorporate into it the fact that we are not doing this alone, we are commanded as a community, then I think it affords a deeper understanding. Also, one of the things I like to think about in this parsha is that it is the end of a parenthesis. The parentheses that began when we left Egypt. And we'll see some common threads that tie, even some familiar words from the Haggadah. And I'll point them out briefly. So we're reading chapter 7, verse 12 through 16 for the first Aliyah. והיה עקב תשמעון את המשפטים האלה ושמרתם ועשיתם אותם ושמר אדוני אלוהיך לך את הברית ואת החסד אשר נשבע לאבותיך ויאהבך וברכך והרבך וברך פרי בטנך ופרי אדמתך דגהנך ותירשך ויצרך שקר עלפיך וישתרות צונך על האדמה אשר נשבע לאבותיך לתת לך ברוך תהיה מכל העמים לא יהיה בך עקר ועקרה ובבהמתך והסיר אדוני ממך כל חולי וכל מדבי מצרים הרעים אשר ידעת לא ישימם בך ונתנם בכל שונאיך ואכלת את כל העמים אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לא תחוס עיניך עליהם ולא תעבוד את אלוהיהם כי מוקש הוא לך. So the very first word in this reading is, the second word rather, is Akev. That's what it's named for. And Akev means heel, and it makes me jump all the way back to Yaakov's name. But what God, it doesn't say, if you do this, then this will happen. And I like to, look at things microscopically. What it really says is, on the heels of your doing this, it's almost a presumption that the nation will follow the laws and will do as God says, because it says on the heels of your doing this, all of these rewards will come, and they will come to the community, not you, the community. The first to follow on the heels of observance, we do that. That's ve'ahevcha. Then we have to love, and then come the blessings, and then we'll multiply as a nation. Not only the nation, but everything thrives. The crops thrive, the animals thrive. No barren animals, it even says there will not be a barren animal. No sickness, and then it alludes to Egypt. No suffering like we had in Egypt. But there's one word that's very interesting here. It says, there's a verse that says, V'achalta v'salvata uvirachta, which is, I think, verse 16. And v'achalta means, and you'll eat. You eat, after you quench your thirst, then you bless God. But it's the same word, v'achalta is the same word as to annihilate. You eat up your neighbors. You eat your enemies, rather. You ingest them, so that's just I think that's weird. That kind of makes me a little nauseous. All right, so the second aliyah is verse 17 through 21, and I challenge you to find a verse that's very familiar from the Haggadah when you're reading this. כי תאמר בלבבך רבים הגויים האלה ממני, איכה אוכל להורישם, לא תירא מהם, זכור תזכור את אשר עשה אדוני אלוהיך לפרעה ולכל מצרים, המסות הגדולות אשר ראו עיניך, והאותות והמופתים והיד החזקה והזרוע הנטויה אשר הוציאך אדוני אלוהיך כן יעשה אדוני אלוהיך לכל העמים אשר אתה ירא מפניהם וגם את הסירה ישלח אדוני אלוהיך בהם עד אבוד הנשארים והנסתרים מפניך לא תרוץ מפניהם כי אדוני אלוהיך בקרבך אל גדול ונורא. So I don't know if anybody noticed where it says Yad Chazaka Zroa Natuya, we get that all, which means a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. We see that a lot in our Passover Haggadah. But this is a call back to Egypt, and it's that's the beginning of parentheses, and we're now as preparing ourselves to enter the land at the end of the parentheses. And God is saying, as I did this for you when you were going to be leaving Egypt, to get you out of Egypt, I will do this for you. I will be this for you going into this strange new place. Okay. So the third aliyah is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 22 to 26. V'noshal Adonai Elohecha et hagayim ha'el mipanecha me'at lo tuchel kalotam maher pentir be'alecha chayat hasadeh untanam Adonai Elohecha lefanecha v'hamam mehuma gedolah ad hashamdaham ונתן מלכיהם בידיך, והעבדת את שמם מתחת השמיים, לא יתייצב איש בפניך, עד השמידך אותם, פסילי אלוהיהם תשרפון באש, לא תחמוד כסף וזהב עליהם, ולקחת לך, פן תבקש בו, כי תועבת אדוני אלוהיך הוא, ולא תביא תועבה אל ביתך, והיית חרם כמוהו, שקץ תשקצנו, ותאב תתאבנו, כי חרם הוא. So just briefly, God explains that this isn't going to be a quick takeover because the beasts will multiply, the crops will die, they'll get overgrown. So it has to be gradual. It's almost like he's saying that we have to get the economy stabilized before you can then take over the whole land. It doesn't pay to take over something which is broken. That's how I see this. In the next aliyah, chapter 8, verse 1 through 3, we see that it starts on a positive note. Kol ha-mitzvah asher anochi mitzavecha hayom tishmerun la'asahot leman tichyun u'revitem uvatem v'rishtem et ha'aretz asher nishba Adonai levatechem וזכרת את כל הדרך אשר הוליכך אדוני אלוהיך זה 40 שנה במדבר למען ענותך לנסותך לדעת את אשר בלבבך התשמור מצוותיו אם לא ויענך ויריבך ויאכילך את המן אשר לא ידעת ולא ידעון אבותיך למען הודיעך כי לא הלחם לבדו יחיה אדם כי על כל מוצא כפי אדוני יחיה אדם. So there's a really famous translated quote here, which says, by bread alone, man can't live. And when I was looking through my favorite Rav, my favorite Rav, whose Chumash I use, Rav Hirsch, he says that, very interestingly, he says that bread is you can't live on bread alone because bread is something that humans make. But it has to be the blend of the creativity that God gave us to do something with the grain that we have grown as farmers. And so we can't do it by ourselves. We can't do anything by ourselves. Whatever we're doing, God figures into the equation because it is God's blessings that we start with. God reminds us that He fed us when we had nothing else to eat when we were wandering for 40 years. And that again is a beginning of the parentheses because it's now we are in a land flowing with milk and honey. We will be there within days. And that is again God's blessing to us. So we have to remember that anything we do is not by our hands alone. Anything we do comes forward from the blessings that God has given us, whether we do it alone or we do it as a community. The next aliyah is verse 4, chapter 8, verse 4 through verse 10, and that's the 5th. Simlatecha lo valta me'alecha v'raglecha lo batseka ze 40 shana v'yodata im levavecha ki ka'asher yaser ish et beno Adonai Elohecha miyasreka v'shamarta et mitzvot Adonai Elohecha lalechet bidrachav u'lira otoho Ki Adonai Elohecha M'viacha el Eretz Tova, Eretz Nachle Mayim, Ayanot Utomohot, Yotzim Babika Uvahar, Eretz Chita, Us Ora, V'gefen Ute'ena V'rimohon, Eretz Zeit Shemen Udvahash, Eretz Asher Lo V'mis B'miskenut tochal ba lechem lo techsar kol bahach Eretz asher avaneha barzel umehareha tachsov nechoshet ve'achalta v'savata uverachta et Adonai Elohecha ala ha'aretz hatova asher nahatan lach. So here's another one of those parenthetical moments for me, because God says, we didn't have problems with our shoes. Our shoes never wore out while we were doing this 40-year trek in the wilderness. If you remember, though, it was also feet that was one of the first things that we really focused on when we left Egypt. We came to this big sea and we were going to cross it, but how? And when the water split, the ground was dry. So God took care that our feet didn't get wet, even leaving Mitzrayim. And then throughout the 40 years, God took care that our feet were well covered, because how else would we have made the journey? And to me, that says that God was just providing for all the things we needed to be able to make that journey for 40 years and get to where we were at that moment. So the next aliyah, the 6th aliyah, is from verse 11 through 18. That's the 6th aliyah. Hishamer lecha pen tishkach et Adonai Elohecha levilti shemor mitzvotav umishpatav v'kuchotav asher anochi mitzavacha hayom pen tochal v'savata uvatim tovim tivne v'yashavta uvkarcha v'tzonecha yir b'yuhun v'chesed v'zahav yir belach v'chol asher lecha yir beh v'ram levavecha v'shachachta et Adonai Elohecha hamotziacha meretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim המוליכך במדבר הגדול והנורא. נחש שרף ועקרב, וצמאון אשר אין מים, המוציא לך מים מצור החלמיש, המאכלך מן במדבר, אשר לא ידעון אבותיך, למען ענותך ולמען נסותיך, להיטיבך באחריתך. ואמרת בלבבך, כוחי ועוצם ידי עשה לי את החיל הזה, וזכרת את אדוני אלוהיך, כי הוא הנותן לך כוח לעשות חיל, למען הקים את בריתו אשר נשבע לאבותיך כיום הזה. So God here is just saying, look, things are going to get better. Don't forget me during those. I'm not just the prayer in the foxhole. And don't forget me when times get good, but rather remember that they're only getting good because you've observed the mitzvot and now you're being blessed. And the last aliyah is verse 19 through chapter 9, verse 3. V'haya im shachoach tishkach et Adonai Elohecha v'halachta achrei Elohim achirim ve'avodatam v'hishtachavita lahem v'ha'idoti v'chem hayom ki avod toviduhun kagoyim asher Adonai ma'avid mibnechem ken toviduhun Ekev lo tishme'un b'kol Adonai Elohechem Shema Yisrael Ata over hayom et hayarden lavo lareshet goyim gedolim v'atzumim mimeka arim gedolot uvtsurot bashamayim am gadol v'ram b'nei anakim Asher ata yadata ve'ata shamata mi yityatzev lifnei b'nei anahak ve'yadata hayom ki Adonai Elohecha hu ha'over lefanecha esh ochla hu yashmidem v'hu yachni'em lefanecha v'horashtam v'ha'avadatam maher kasher diber Adonai lach. And here God is saying, I'm going to make you mighty. Those giants that you saw way back when Yehoshua went into the land, they're not going to bother you. You're going to overtake them. But remember that without God, none of this will happen. V'zehu.
Amen. Yasher koach, kol hakavod, Judy. It was very nice. I love the insight and a lot of good teaching. If people want to go a bit deeper into the last two aliyot, the concept that everything is only because God enabled us to be able to do it, what Judy was talking about there, that was actually the topic of discussion on Tuesday. So you can go to Mishkon's Facebook page and you can watch the replay of our conversation there and look at the text that we discussed. We had a very nice, lively conversation there on Tuesday. We're going to pause for a Misha Berach, prayer for those in need of some healing. And as I keep saying every week, it's not just those who are physically ill and not even just those who are struggling with their spirits, but really all of us, I know, are struggling emotionally and intellectually, socially. And so I just want an opportunity for us to be able to share any names that you wish to be able to say Misha Berach for, even if it's including yourself. So when I pause, I'll just ask if you'll unmute yourself and just put your hand up by your face so I can call on you, so we're not all speaking at the same time. Misha Berach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech v'yarpeh et hacholim. Kevin?
My wife, Malgosha.
Frederica?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my father, Fred Martin, and our members, Bruce and Jill Culverts.
Carol Stein?
Ariel Ben Bracha, my nephew and David's nephew, and my former brother-in-law, Meade Martin.
Peter?
My daughter, Laura, and my little grandson, Ellis, who is progressing. He went from a ventilator to the CPAP, and they're trying to gradually wean him off the CPAP so he'll be breathing on his own fairly soon, we hope.
Bezrat Hashem. Carol Felixson?
My aunts Hope and Flora, Ben Zion, Ben Fega, friends Rick and Lois, Amy and Karen.
Rena?
Elka Bela bat Hadassah, Chana bat Aliza, Avram ben Aliza, Chana Rivka bat Tovaleah, Elimelech ben Sarah, Yitteruchel bat Leah, Larry Lynch.
Okay. All right. So, see, a few of you said some names already that we have here on the list. So we'll add the other names to our mix. Rachel Devora bat Leah, Deborah Bronner, Ariella bat Dana, Moshe Yafa ben Rachel, Gior ben Safra, Abraham ben Eliyahu, Kineret bat Zipporah, Chana bat Nomi. Yeah. Kulanu v'kol cholei magefa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem, lachzikam l'patam nishlach lehem mehera ufar shlema min hashemayim, rafut hanefesh urafut haguf b'toch shar cholim, v'chazek et idei oskim b'tzorcheichem, Shabbat hi milizok rufra krova lavo, hashab g'lav zman kariv v'nomar, Amen. Refuah shlema, a full and speedy recovery swiftly to all those in need, as well as those who are seeing to the care of all those in need. So we'll pause. We'll take a look at the texts a little bit deeper than what we've been doing. And actually, I want to take a look at a couple verses that we didn't actually read from today. They're from further on in the Parsha. If this were the second year of the Triennial, we would have read them. But this is Deuteronomy. I'm looking in the middle of chapter 10. I'm going to read to you the verses and then kind of explain a little bit more here. I'll read them to you in English, make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to read the very end of Moses's kind of this current monologue that he's sharing with the people. This is chapter 10, verse 10. I had stayed on the mountain as I did the first time, 40 days and 40 nights. And Adonai heeded me once again. Adonai agreed not to destroy you. And Adonai said to me, Up, resume the march at the head of the people, that they may go in and possess the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. So this is the very end, right? God is telling Moses, lead the people. You're not going to go into the land of Israel, but you're going to lead them there, right? And now, O Israel, what does Adonai your God demand of you? Only this, to revere or fear or have awe of Adonai your God, to walk only in God's paths, to love God, and to serve Adonai your God with all your heart and soul, keeping Adonai's commandments and laws, which I enjoin upon you today for your good. I'm going to pause there. So what we see here is Moses getting ready to leave the Israelites and preparing them for that moment. Right? Everybody knows that this is coming very soon. About 7 weeks from now, it's going to be happening. 1 second. About 7 weeks from now, this is going to be happening. We're going to be at the very end of the Torah. And so he's preparing them to move on without a leader. And so now what, right? What happens now without him? Right? Moses was the one who spoke with God. Joshua is not one who has the direct relationship with God the way that Moses did. And so the Israelites are going to be on their own as far as performing all the mitzvot and doing everything that God has taught them. But it's interesting to note that it doesn't say, right, what does God ask? It doesn't say what does God demand of you, what does God command you. It says what does God ask of you. It says, the Hebrew is, Ma Adonai Elohecha shoel mimach, me'imach. What does God ask of you? Shoel is the word here, not tziva, command. God is not telling us what we have to do. Rather, God is asking us, because it's not for God. This is for us. It's for our own good, as it says at the very end of verse 13. It says, L'tov lach. This is all for your own good, for what is good for you. And this is multiple rabbis, starting with Rashi, all point out to this word here, this phrase, L'tov lach. This is all for our own good, not for the service of God. So what is it exactly that God is asking of us? Right? God is asking us for two things, right? To have yirah, which could be translated as awe, or fear, or reverence, and ahava, love, pretty much generally understood as love. If we recall the story of Jacob, right? If we actually go even further back, we recall the stories of Abraham. Right? Abraham represented love. Rabbis, especially Hasidic rabbis, drash on this all the time, that Abraham reflects love, which wasn't enough. Right? He was willing to do everything in the service of God, including sacrificing his son, and that blind love wasn't enough to convince both of his sons to carry on the tradition. We know that Isaac continued the tradition, but Ishmael, not so much. And then we have Yitzchak, Isaac, representing the concept of yirah, of fear or awe or reverence. And he was kind of frozen to inaction because of this yirah. And we know that that wasn't enough to convince both of his children to continue their relationship with God. Yaakov did, but Esav did not. But finally we have Yaakov, who kind of marries the two. Yaakov is the representation of both yirah and ahava in one being, this balance between the two. He lives a life of fear. He runs away from his brother. He tricks his father because he's afraid of saying the truth. But at some point, he addresses that fear. He wrestles with it, and he actually lives out the rest of his life in this place of love of God, of study, of this commitment to Torah. So he represents that merger, that balance between the two. And of course, he found the successful formula because all 12 of his children continued on in the Jewish tradition. So the question is then, how do we go about arriving at that balance of yirah and ahava? Or how do we even achieve either of those? And according to the text here, it's done through the performance of mitzvot. Right? We get to the sense of awe. It says here, "L'lechet b'darachav," to walk in God's ways. And this means that we stay on God's path and we don't veer away from it. Right? This is the idea of yirah. Right? Maybe we're afraid what would happen if we veer off of God's path, but we stay here. In a way, this is also connected to the idea of kibud av v'em, of honoring our parents. That when we think about the idea of honor, it really is tied to this idea of yirah, of awe, or reverence. And what we're not allowed to do is we're not allowed to, really what to honor your parents means, you don't contradict them in public. You don't sit in their seat at the table. Right? You don't try to usurp their place. You understand where your position is in relation to them. And you see too that they are cared for. Right? But this idea that we understand our place and we don't try to question, at least in public, the authority in our lives. And so this is the idea with God as well. We do what God asks us, especially in public. We don't want to challenge that. This is also reflected in the idea of Shomer Shabbat, being Shomer Shabbat. I was speaking last night at the end of services that the Drash today was going to be reflecting on the Shabbat candles. Right? We have two Shabbat candles, and we say that one of them reflects the idea of Shomer Shabbat, which is what we learn about, the mitzvah that we get in the Ten Commandments last week in Parshat Va'etchanan. the idea of keeping Shabbat. That is, to keep Shabbat from becoming profane and mundane like the rest of the week. We have to safeguard it. And that's all from the sense of awe and reverence. Okay, so that's the idea of mitzvot, getting us to awe. But what about for love? For love, it says here in the Parsha, right, by serving God with all of our hearts and all of our souls, which should make us think about V'ahavta, which we just read 2 weeks ago. And even there, right, in the ancient world, it's not just our heart isn't the heart as we think of it today. In the ancient world, the heart was a seat of knowledge, was the seat of da'at, of knowing things. And so we serve God by having God in our minds. And in the rabbi's commentary on V'ahavta, right, the idea of b'chol nafshecha, there, with your nefesh reflects our bodies or our lives. This idea that we serve God, we love God, to the point that we would put our lives at risk. That, if someone were to hold a gun to our heads and say, worship this idol or die, we know that we are supposed to die, because idolatry would be the worst thing, right? It'd be the rejection of God. In theory, right? That is what the rabbis teach us. But the idea that our bodies should be involved in this idea of performing mitzvot, that our bodies and our actions should always be directed towards God. So in other words, what it's saying, to get to love, it's by having our minds and our actions always God-focused, which is reflected in the concept of Zachor Shabbat. From the first time we get the Ten Commandments back in Exodus, right, the idea of remembering Shabbat. That is, that we think about Shabbat throughout the week. We buy things, a nice bottle of wine, or we sit around and we plan out what our meal is going to be. We say, this week I think I'm going to have a brisket, and I'm going to make sure I get to the butcher in time, or I call the butcher to make sure it's actually there so I can just pick it up on the curb, right? And trying to have things really special for Shabbat itself. Right? Making sure that it's different than the rest of the week. So through the mitzvot, we have this idea of awe and love. Making sure that it's protected and going out of our way to do nice things for it. In this case, for God. Right? And striking this balance between love and awe, between shamor v'zachor, again, God's telling us here, it's not for, or rather Moses is telling us here, it's not for God. It's for us. It's for our own benefit. And we don't need somebody to command us to do these things, because we know precisely how we benefit from these actions. We know how much better we feel when we have an escape from our work and from our tasks, our errands for 25 hours, when we don't worry about those things that have to get done and just allow ourselves some room to breathe. We know how much more human we feel after having a full day of relaxation and recreation. God doesn't have to command us to do that stuff. We want to do it because we know how much more like ourselves we feel as a result of it. But the trick is that the benefits come from being in balance. Right? If we look at even a little bit of work emails on Shabbat, while we're still doing all these really nice things, having a wonderful meal, it still diminishes the benefit of the day. Right? And if we don't do any of the things we do during the rest of the week, but nothing special, nothing about Shabbat feels special. We don't have a nice glass of wine. We don't have a dessert that we really love. We don't take some time to crack open a book that we've been wanting to read. Right? That too diminishes the joy of Shabbat. So what God's asking us to remember is that we need both. That to be human is to live in balance between the two. God's never going to command that of us, but rather God trusts that we'll be able to recognize the good that we derive from heeding God's word, listening to God's teaching, walking in God's ways, and loving God with our hearts and with our bodies. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And Donna, it's nice to see you joining us as well. It's been a while since you've been with us for services, just really great to have you here. So we are going to turn back in our to our Sidurim. We're going to turn to page 177, a prayer for our country, and then we'll shift over to a prayer for the state of Israel. And yet we find our country once again at an impasse when it comes to healing everybody financially, emotionally, and and healing our economy as well as our bodies. So hopefully all those in leadership roles will be able to find a way towards agreement in the very, very soon, very near future. Again, we're on page 177 in the left-hand column, alternative prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, grant to our country the will and wherewithal to fulfill its calling to justice, liberty, and equality. May each of us fulfill our responsibilities of citizenship with care, generosity, and gratitude, ever conscious of the extraordinary blessing of freedom, ever mindful of our duties to one another. Bless those who volunteer to labor on behalf of us all. May they find the strength and courage to complete their tasks and fulfill their dreams. May our judges, elected leaders, and all who hold public office exercise their responsibilities with wisdom, fairness, and justice for all. Fill them with love and kindness, and bless them that they may walk with integrity on the paths of peace and righteousness. Creator and protector of all, watch over our armed forces and all those entrusted with our safety, as they daily put their lives at risk to protect us and our freedoms. Be with them in times of danger. Give them courage to act with honor and dignity, as well as insight to do what is right in your eyes. Fill us all with the gifts of love and courage, that we may create a world that reflects your glory. May we each respond to the charge of your prophet, for what does Adonai demand of you? But to act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. May the one who brings peace on high bring peace and prosperity to our world, and keep us in safety. And let us say, Amen. Of course, that is Prophet Micha saying, what does God demand of you? Versus Moshe, what does God ask of you? Page 178, prayer for the state of Israel. Of course, our hearts are also with the state of Lebanon, that is truly rocked by massive explosion and far too numerous deaths and casualties. And it was really lovely to see Tel Aviv City Hall. I don't know if you saw this, but the lights of the windows at Tel Aviv City Hall were lit up as the flag of Lebanon this past week, showing their solidarity with their neighbors to the north, and hoping that those with the insights and the commitment to peace and well-being will help inspire an end to hatred and violence in the region. Hopefully that reasonable and peaceful mindset will prevail. And so we pray to God, asking that to be so. Page 178. Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Gulatenu, Hagen Aleha Bavrat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha v'ametcha l'rosheha sareha v'yoetzeha, v'taknem be'etzah tova milfanecha, Chazek yidei migdei eretz kodshenu, v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'ater netzachon ta'atrem, v'natata sholom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshveha, v'nomar, Amen. We'll turn to page 204 for Ein Kelohenu. And let's do the traditional melody. Page 204. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Chadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shiktiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Eketoret Hasamim. Page 205 for Aleinu. If you're willing and able, I invite you to rise. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, l'tet gula liotze reshit, shelo asanu kudei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Notei Shamayim Ve'osted Haaretz U'moshev Yekaro Hashamayim Mima'al U'shchinatu zo B'govhei meromim Hu Eloheinu Einod Nemet Malkeinu Efes Ulato Kakatuv B'Torato V'yadata Hayom V'hashevota El Levavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'Shamayim Mima'al V'yal ha'aretz Mitachat Enod Enod. Kakatuv b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed V'nemar v'haya Adonai L'melech al kol ha'aretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad. You may be seated if you are standing. This Shabbat, we lovingly recall the memories of, is it Susan Peaks or is it Picus, Bill? Oh, did we lose Bill?
No, he's here.
Oh, there you are, Bill. Sorry. Is it Peaks or Picus? You gotta unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
There you go.
It's Picus.
Picus, okay. So your sister, it's her first yard site, the end of the first year.
Yeah.
And it's today. So for your sister Susan, and for Jack Malamud, for Leela Swift, and Alfred Saunders, Joseph Baccarat, and David Gamliel, Herbert Geil, and Anita Rittenberg, Morris Podis, Sarah Bronstein, and Dina Byron. Also, this I just learned that this week we lost one of our congregants, David Rose. So you may or may not know Susan and David. They primarily come on the high holidays, and they only recently moved to Los Angeles a few years ago. But a very sweet couple. And David died suddenly from a heart attack this past week. And so really our hearts go out to Susan and to their children, Jessica and Samantha and Ben. I'm wishing them all the best. Information will come out in the next day or two about if there will be a funeral or anything. Yeah, and with we mentioned Leela here. That's Russell's mother, and tonight at 8:15 there will be a Havdalah and Yard Site Minyan for in honor of her memory as well. So, but this time I'd like to invite all those who have a need or desire say Kaddish.
You also mentioned Rabbi Steinsaltz passed away, and
Oh yes, sorry. Yes, right. Yes, yesterday I mentioned that Rabbi Dean Steinsaltz who first translated the Talmud into modern Hebrew from Aramaic, and then oversaw the translation into English as well as Russian. So anybody who's ever studied Talmud in English, specifically if you've used the Koran Talmud or if you've gone to Sefaria, and pretty much any time I've taught Talmud, I use those translations. We are greatly indebted to Rabbi Steinsaltz, and also Rabbi Shaya Kalimnik from Rochester, who was the Orthodox rabbi of BBYO for a couple decades. Actually, when I was at summer programs, he was the Orthodox rabbi. I didn't go to the Orthodox Minyan, but he was the Orthodox rabbi there. His son David is a comedian in Jerusalem that many people know. And Reb Shaya also influenced many of my friends and colleagues towards the rabbinate. So a lot of losses in the Jewish world this week. So I'd like to, all those who have a need or desire to say Kaddish, to join me on page 207. Please feel free to unmute yourselves to say, either to be able to say the words of Kaddish or to be able to say Amen. And it'll be messy and disorganized as it usually is whenever one says Kaddish, but we're saying it together with one another. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Yalmad divrah chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyamechon u'chayei b'kol beit Yisrael, b'galah u'b'zman kariv v'yimru amen.
Man,
Yehei shmei
Rabba
Rabbah
Mevorach Le'olam Omer Maya.
Yitbarach v'yitabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu
Brichu.
le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Osei shalom v'romav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
May the one who makes peace in the heavens above make peace for us, for all of Israel, and for all of humanity. And let us say,
Amen.
Zichronam livracha. May all their memories be for a blessing. And we don't have any anniversaries this week, which is not surprising, as it was so close to Tisha B'Av. But we do have a number of birthdays this week. Starting with today is Laurent Levy, his birthday. And then tomorrow, Eyal Goldman. So you might not know Eyal as much. He's pretty quiet, but his wife, Deborah, Rabbi Deborah, will read Torah for us sometimes, and the kids are involved with religious school. Michael Bell has a birthday this week, as is Will Grant, and Itai Klein, and Spencer Rosenheck, and Rabbi Aviva Funke on the same day. And then Barbara Efros and Kelly Courtney have their birthdays on Friday. And then next Shabbat is Marcy Drexler's birthday. So any other simchas or anything that we'd like to share with one another? Yeah, Carol Felixson.
Well, today is my little grandson Zane's second birthday, and he's going to have a socially distanced outdoors party with the theme of trucks in the world besides his sister. And I wanted to thank you, Rabbi, for tuning me on to the Caribou app. Wonderful app that mostly grandparents, I think, share with their grandkids with reading and activities. And we've been doing that, and I've been sharing that with other friends who are grandparents of young children. It's so much fun.
And are you just reading, or are you doing the puzzles and drawing pages? And...
we're doing the drawing and the reading so far.
Good.
Yeah.
Very nice. And happy birthday to the kiddo. Morley.
Yes, I leave for Sequoia bright and early tomorrow morning. We'll be gone for 4 days, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm very excited.
We wish you a safe and healthy trip.
Thank you.
And say hello to the trees for us. Yes, Jeff Gornbein.
I was going to say, after 3 years of laboring, we have a urine test for gestational diabetes, and the paper finally got published, and some company might want to actually implement it.
Wow.
See if it actually works in a large number of women now. So they'll be able to figure out at the first trimester whether you're going to have gestational diabetes. We got 96% of them right.
And what would have been the test before?
You wouldn't. There wasn't a test. You just get it.
Oh, so at least this way you can be
This way you
prepared.
can prepare for it and head it off, maybe. And you can pee on something.
Yeah, you're a peon. All right, Marilyn. It's hard to see your hand, but it looks like it's waving up there.
Yes, I didn't put up my other hand because it has this on it, so I used this one. But this actually didn't happen this week, but a couple of weeks ago, but I forgot to mention it when Phil had a program with the psychologist Dr. Leonard Felder, because he recently wrote a book called We See It So Differently. But Dr. Felder had also written a book many years ago called The 10 Challenges, Spiritual Lessons from the 10 Commandments. And that book was so helpful to me as caregiver to my mother when I lost her back in 1994. And so I had the opportunity to thank Dr. Felder for how helpful his book was to me. And this was like 20 years after he had written that book. So he shared with us how he had it had been rejected, I think, by 20 publishers. And so he used it, he wanted it to be an inspiration to anyone with a creative task to not give up. But it was delightful to have the opportunity to thank him.
That's lovely. It's wonderful. Yeah, Carol Stein.
I wanted to mention my great nephew Hunter's 8th birthday last week. And one of the gifts that he got from my father, his great grandfather, was a small kayak, which he's putting to use in the Chesapeake Bay.
Wonderful.
That's cool.
He's out on a kayak by himself in the bay at age 8?
With his seagoing grandmother, my sister,
Wow.
right in her own kayak next to him.
That's so cool. Very nice. Any other simchas? No? Yes, Raz.
It's birthday month in my family too. Two of my nephews and my sister-in-law all have August birthdays that are upcoming.
Very nice. So I know we're in a time of simcha here, but Bill, I know that obviously you haven't been with us for services in quite a while, and it's pretty difficult not having your sister. I was wondering if you maybe just want to share a couple words about memory of your sister, just anything, any fond memories of her, or anything from this past year that's been really difficult and what you miss most about her. Anything, if you wish to share with us. I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. Just have to unmute yourself if you,
In the year 2000, I threw myself a golden anniversary of my bar mitzvah. Some people remember in the congregation. My sister flew out and she brought me a tallis for the occasion. The day before, we were sitting around the table at Factor's at brunch on Friday, and she gave me two taluses, one 3 feet and one 4 feet long. She said, "Which one do you want?" I said, "I don't know. How do I decide?" She said, "Well, try it on." And I said, "Right here in Factor's Deli?" She said, "What do you think's going to happen? 9 guys are going to stand up and start davening?" So that was my sister. She had a great sense of humor, and she seemed to be just made of empathy. So I learned a lot from her, and I really miss her badly.
Thank you for sharing. I hope you'll continue joining us for services now that you kind of walked you through and got you here with us this Shabbat. And I hope that your sister's memory is always going to be a blessing for you, and you have plenty of fond memories to be able to share with all of us for many years. And speaking of Kelly, I just want to also acknowledge Kelly not just for manning Zoom for us, but just for everything that she does. That she's always really wonderful and helping people like Bill and plenty of others to kind of navigate how to access all the things that we have, that we can do here. So you are a treasure, and we are
you.
thrilled to be able to celebrate your birthday this coming Friday. So
Thank you.
I want to also thank and acknowledge David for leading us so wonderfully with the davening, and Judy for chanting Torah for us and sharing insight into the parsha as well. So thank you very much to the two of you for everything. And I guess I'll turn it over to Cindy. Madam President, some announcements. I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? My prez, talking about my prez, ooh.
I'm glad you told me that worded link wasn't working, period.
What'd you say?
Oh, let me do the announcements. Good Shabbos. Thank you to Rabbi Botnick for leading our Shabbat services every week. And he's already thanked our special participants today. Following Zoom classes continue this week. Stephanie Avedon's yoga tomorrow morning at 9. Rachel Can's Zumba Monday morning at 10. Rabbi Dan's Prophets Monday evening at 7:30. Rabbi Botnick's Torah study Tuesday afternoon at 2, which may be the last one till after the high holidays. Next week. All right, forget that.
Last week's was the last one.
Oh, last.
And I've already emailed our regular participants, so they all know.
Okay, so
yeah.
Ignore what I said about Rabbi Botnick's Torah study. And Shai Avital's Adult Hebrew Thursday evening at 6 and at 7. Check the messenger or the website for more information and the Zoom one-click. Membership renewals continue to come in. Please renew if you haven't already. And if you are in touch with other Mishkan members, please encourage them to do the same. Plans for the high holy days at Mishkan are taking shape. Our program will be almost entirely online, but we are including an opportunity for people to go to a few outdoor places to hear Rabbi Botnick and Rabbi Dan blow the shofar, properly distanced, of course. Online, we'll have the choir cleverly recorded individually and then combined with technical magic. And you'll see the open ark during the part of the service when you would be lining up and going up to the ark with your family. Only this time, you'll have all the time you want up there home. More plans to come. If you joined the Shiva Minyan for Brett's mother's Yortzeit, Shiva this week, you saw how powerful an online minyan can be. Feel free to talk to Rabbi Botnick about scheduling one for a Yortzeit if you have one coming up. Also this week, Rachel Can graduated from her Jewish priestess training program. Her Kohenet celebration was online and hundreds of people attended. So both her event and Brett's minyan show how amazing it can be to have hundreds of people there to see and share in these events. We could never have all those people if we were doing it live, because many of them were from other parts of the country, other parts of the world. It's a sort of a silver lining. Now you can imagine that we're going downstairs for a yummy kiddush and schmoozing, followed by hugs and kisses before we all leave for home. From my mouth to God's ear, as they say. Good Shabbos. Looks like David wants to say something.
Yes, please. Speaking about High Holy Days, I wanted to note that this week we're added to the calendar for 3 weeks from tomorrow, a workshop on how do you prepare for the High Holy Days that will be on Zoom, and I'm organizing it. And I am looking still for 4 more people to assist as facilitators in small group discussions. That means someone, if you're a good active listener and are able to make sure that everyone else gets a turn, then I welcome you to talk to me sometime in the next couple of weeks. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, you know what? There is one more thing which has to do with the earlier question about how to say Amen in sign language. I remembered that there are actually several ways to do it, and one of them is like this, Amen, like that.
Do it again.
So one hand over the other, and then Amen.
Cool. Toda rabah. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. And I guess we'll conclude our service on page 211 with Adon Olam. And then afterwards, anybody who wants to be able to sit around and chat, by all means, please feel free to do so. And page 211, Adon Olam. Trying to think of something fun, but can't think of anything fun. Adon Olam asher malach v'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol livado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh Vehu yeh betifara, vehu echad v'yein sheni, lehamshir lo lehachbira, v'li reshit v'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra, vehu eli, v'chai goadli, v'tzur chevli b'eit tzara, vehu nisi umanos li, Menat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado afkid ruchi v'et ishan v'ya'ira v'im ruchi geviati Adonai li v'lo ira. Good Shabbos, everybody. I forgot there were 2 other things. So one more time a reminder, tonight at 8:15 we'll be doing a Havdalah Mariv Yartzeit Minyan, and the links and everything are on mishkan.org at the calendar. And then just a shout out to Katie Villanueva and Leo Pusilnikov, who you may remember from coming to services in person for maybe the last few months before we stopped having services in person. But they were supposed to be getting married in Greece tomorrow, but instead they'll be getting married on the roof of of a building in Beverly Hills tomorrow. So be a very nice, much smaller gathering of folks, and obviously all outside and socially distanced, but just sending best wishes to them. And obviously they weren't able to have an ufruf this Shabbat as one normally would have, but wishing them all the best. So all right, folks, feel free to unmute yourselves, chat, kibbutz, and whatnot.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
See everyone. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Morley.
Have a nice
Morley,
trip.
have a good
Oh,
trip.
hear my name?
Yeah,
Yeah,
have a
I
good
said,
trip.
have a nice trip, Morley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Thank
Me
you.
too. I said that too.
Oh, okay, thank you, Rena. I'll tell you guys all about it the following Shabbos. I'll be back in time for next week. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm going to go have lunch.
Hi, Hammy.
Hi. Hi, Kevin.
How's it going?
All right. Thank
Good.
you. I'll be going to Mammoth in a week.
Yay.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. Maybe I'll catch some fish in the lake behind me.
That would be nice.
Oh, you can make somebody the host if you want to take off. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Well, I just want to say hi to everybody. Shabbat shalom. It's always good to see you guys next week.
It's always good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Good to see
Well, happy
everyone.
birthday. Bill, good to see you. Oop. I love your background, Bill.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
muted. You're muted. You can hold down the space key. Also, is another way to do it. Still can't hear you. We still can't hear you. I don't know. There you go.
I said, don't worry, I'm not going to jump.
I was gonna say it's a cool background.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I can't get rid of it.
Oh well, you can probably
I'm very low tech. Don't bother trying to
all
explain.
right. I won't fool with it.
Okay, I have a rotary phone next to my bed.
Really, boy, that's
Yep.
that's old school.
Yep.
I
It's
still
good,
have one a long time ago.
really good to see all you guys.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got everything working at least.
Yeah.
And
And special thanks to Kelly for walking me through all this stuff yesterday.
yeah, it's hard. I had to teach a class with it. That was really weird. Students wouldn't let me see their face. I had one student, I don't even know what gender they are. They never showed their face the whole time, and they hardly spoke.
Hmm.
It was a very strange experience to teach a class on Zoom. But anyway, I'm getting used to it. I hope you are. I hope that we have alternatives soon. So anyway, I was gonna go eat lunch. You feeling okay?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you're the only one left. Just you and me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm doing, as they say, as well as can be expected.
Yeah. Okay. You know, it's just you and me. Everybody else left.
Okay.
Okay. Now I was gonna go eat. Okay. So it's
Me too. So long, Jeff.
Okay. Take it easy. Shabbat shalom.
Maybe I'll see it. Maybe I'll see it tonight at that menu.
Yeah, that might be cool. Okay. Oh, here comes Gabriel. I don't know. All right. I'll see you later.